Let me say, Adam, as a human being and as a fellow choir director, and I know every choir director for which this came up, our hearts go out to you, and we recognize this could have been any of us at that time, and how sorry I am that you and your choir family experienced this.
Thank you.
The
Go ahead.
second thing I wanted to ask, how is your wife doing?
In terms of COVID or in
Yes,
terms of,
in terms
you
of
know,
COVID.
uh-huh. So, well, I'll put a little bit larger frame around this in that at the time that this was the March 10th rehearsal that we had, where there were 61 people in attendance and 53 very likely had COVID. And it's very likely actually that the remaining 8 people who never showed symptoms could have also had it as well. I think that's an important thing for choral directors to be aware. The Department of Health in the Skagit County has confirmed there's no reason to think that everybody didn't have it, that 100% of the people in that room didn't get it. Because testing, as you know, is such a problematic thing. So, big picture, I was the center of a web of communication. I was communicating and encouraging our members to be buddies with each other, to check in with 2 or 3 other chorale members, see how they're doing. Are they sick? What are their needs? Are they getting contact with other people? And so I heard a lot about what people were experiencing, either themselves or their family members, in terms of their COVID experience. And it was varied. It was widely varied, even among that 50 people or so. So with my wife, she had a different experience than I did. And she had what we call COVID headaches, which came about when she was exposed to hot water. So loves to take hot baths, but whenever she does now, she has what she thinks, and this is not confirmed by a doctor, but we've learned about a condition associated with MS, which is temperature sensitivity, that people can't tolerate exposure to hot temperatures, and so we have this possibility that COVID affects people neurologically, and we think that maybe that's the case for her because it's 6 months on and she's still finding that effect. Otherwise, I mean, we had light cases. We got off pretty easily. I know I have members of the chorale who don't breathe the same way they used to, who fear that their lungs have been seriously compromised by having even a mild case. So I haven't really had the opportunity to talk to my chorale members one on one as I might when we meet to see what individual experiences were. Maybe I should facilitate that. We've been focusing on music, on rehearsing lately. But I do know that there was one person whose spouse was got COVID, got seriously sick, high temperature, long time, just weeks and weeks fighting COVID, getting maybe better? No, not better. Getting maybe better? No, not better. And we were fearful for that person that they might go into the hospital and not come out, as we had 2 members do. So we did have one member who went into the hospital and was on a ventilator and was able to get off, which is a blessing. So I'm not sure, I kind of gave you a very long answer to the question about something specific about my wife, but where were you headed with that? Or
Well,
what
just
else?
well, just because I have some experience with national media, and I know all too well that they're not always interested in details. And as you said, sometimes it's just a rush, and other times it's to sensationalize. So I just wanted to know, and because I'm not sure that I followed, but you indicated that maybe some details were left out or not
Mm.
explained correctly. And what is that you would like us to
Oh,
know?
thank you for asking. Um, so it has to do with our decision-making process in going forward with that rehearsal. Those were some of the main things that I really was frustrated with how the media presented us. The first thing that really hit the national attention was the LA Times article in late March that was written about us, and both the headline and some of the writing in the article seemed to suggest that we had the rehearsal in spite of the risks, in spite of the danger. I suppose you could say that's true. There were risks and we chose to go ahead with the rehearsal, but there's an implication that we were reckless. And certainly there were people on social media and out there on the web. I've done very little looking at that, but I know there are people who considered us reckless. Somebody said we had blood on our hands because of going forward with that rehearsal. Things people say, really awful things, knowing nothing about the situation. So what I would want to say is, before the March 3rd rehearsal, the week before, the board and I discussed at length the question of whether we should meet. We were looking at the CDC, we were looking at the Skagit County Public Health website and their recommendations, and we didn't have a case. Actually, it's a very ironic thing. The first COVID case in Skagit County was announced at 3 o'clock on the day we had that rehearsal, which, as the county department has said, there's no way we could have known about that unless we were like somehow watching the county for every announcement. So we didn't know that it was actually in the county at that point. The Governor Inslee, who I actually am very happy with how he has responded to the COVID crisis overall. So we are in Skagit County, right? Seattle is in King County, and then the two adjoining counties, Snohomish and Pierce County, are the two other major urban counties in Washington. So the day after our rehearsal, where we all got sick on March 10th, Governor Inslee that day put a limit on meetings of 250 people in those three counties. So we still weren't under any restrictions in Skagit Valley at the point when we were making our and nobody was actually when we had our rehearsal of about 60 people. The week before, as I was getting at before, we had decided to have rehearsal on March 3rd. We sent out an email in advance of that rehearsal saying, if you're sick, don't come. If you have symptoms of any sort, don't come. If you have fear about or concern about your health, don't come. When you come, wash your hands, stay away from people, use hand sanitizer. We had a whole series of things in place, and you know this, I'm sure, because you probably did the same sort of thing, just as thousands and thousands and millions of other singers and musicians and actors and ballet dancers, and all of us were doing that at the time.
Yeah.
But we didn't know that that wasn't enough. And so there was a period, and here I am still doing it, where we were trying to, I don't want to use the word justify, because that's not really the word what I want, but to explain how we came to our decision making and our feeling that we really could not have known. So, but some people didn't see it that way, and they felt that we should have known better. Although if you apply that, then you should apply that to basically everybody. Nobody should have been rehearsing at that point. And probably that's true. And if you go back, if we'd known more from China, if our federal government had shared more with us, if we had known more, then we could have avoided that. So it comes down to individuals making decisions based on what they know. We know a lot more now. Aerosol science has come a long ways because of our rehearsal and many other actually events that have happened. Our rehearsal is now called the notorious rehearsal or the infamous rehearsal, but at least there is good science coming out of it that's educating people so they can not make the same decisions we did.
Yeah, well, I can say, Adam, and I'm not saying this to make you feel good. I can just speak honestly. I've talked to so many people around Cronin Choir. I have not heard anybody, choir director, layperson, when this has come up, cast any aspersions. And it doesn't surprise me around the choir directors, because we all know damn right well, again, we knew nothing. We all were having rehearsals, and some had it further into March. Mm-hmm. And you know what, I don't know if this analogy is somewhat useful, but in my own thinking about, and just instinctively, I just knew, wow, like that so easily could have been me. But I thought about it some more, and I think about situations where we've had a little bit of snow in the forecast. A little bit, and it's saying it's not even going to lay in the ground, and the whole organization starts to shut down. And how many times I've said, listen, I'm all about safety, but we are having this rehearsal. And I sent out an email that says, if you don't want to come, safety first, but we are having this rehearsal and I hope that you will be here, because if we cancel those rehearsals every time, and it could easily happen that even though in those cases where I have been not pushy, but just say, I hope to see you there, because we do have to rehearse, that it could have easily happened that somebody was in a car accident on the way to that rehearsal. And further, it could have been caused by the 4 flakes of snow on the ground, but it maybe was not.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's a struggle because in one of the things I was quoted in that article in the LA Times, which about 8 million people read, and saying something like, I hope to see you there. It's like, yeah, okay, that's part of what I said. Yes, in the context of all these other things, don't come if. So and
But
actually there have been there was one article I know by a choral conductor who definitely suggested that we were reckless to meet, and it's like, who are you and how can you make this judgment about us? But I want to let that go, but
and if papers weren't trying to sell papers,
yes.
and they had presented the whole spectrum of what you said, I don't think even that one person would have said it. But as we know, there are haters, and choir directors as a species are not exempt from people. There are some really unkind people. I remember when my choir sang at ACDA in Minnesota, we sang a piece called Zikr, which is this amazing Islamic chant of peace. And we had a choir director. I won't mention what state, because I don't want to generalize states, but I found out later that they got right up and they walked out. And I thought, my Lord, if that is a choir director walking out of a choir singing a piece of music that can help bridge people, we're in trouble.
Yeah.
But it was just one.
Yeah, exactly. There was a time when the media storm hit, and where I imagined I was going to communicate with the people who were saying things like that about us. And that didn't last very long. I mean, as I presented myself today, and as I try to present myself regularly, I want to talk to people. I want to find out, I want to have a communication with them. But I couldn't. I couldn't on the internet, especially. There was so little, it seemed, possibility of finding an actual connection, and it didn't really seem to be about what the truth was or what really happened, or it was more about the decisions that they'd already made. So I got to tell you, I don't feel good about that. I felt at the time that was a failure on my part to not engage. But and as you can hear probably in my voice, I'm still ambivalent about all of this. But it, there were so many things that were hard about that time.
Oh,
And so, I give myself a pass. We have to give ourselves passes at times. So, we turned the corner. We recovered, and we are now making music again together. And
virtually?
yeah, so let's take this shift. Um, I am what I did with my college choir. So first of all, I had to pivot on a dime, just like all those educators around the world. And suddenly my college choir became an online college choir. And I said to my dean, I said, yeah, I can do this. I got an idea. And so what I did is I prepared them by telling them about session choirs, both like Norman Luboff and Roger Wagner and groups in Hollywood who did the singing background for Westerns and whatever movies, and about the Wrecking Crew in Los Angeles, the instrumentalists who made music, who recorded the parts for the Beach Boys and Sinatra and Sonny and Cher and all those musicians. Great movie called The Wrecking Crew out there if you want to see that. Highly recommended. And session choirs like the one in Seattle that's contracted singers that get together to record in the chapel at Bastyr University soundtracks for movies and trailers and video games, right? All session choirs. I'm lumping them all together. And the Beach Boys and Enya, who recorded 500 tracks for her song Angelus on the Shepherd Moons album, right? She did all of that singing one part at a time. She and Nikki Ryan put it together and made this incredible choral effect sound out of one person's voice. All of this has been possible for decades, and we can do this now. And so people, a lot of choir directors are hung up on the virtual choir idea, and of course it takes a lot of time
Yeah.
to do that video editing. I would do video click tracks to help my students. I'm conducting you as you're singing at home so that you know exactly where the cutoffs are and all that. And even just syncing my video with my audio tracks, that was hard. I don't even want to think about doing that with 100 people. So, don't get stuck on the virtual choir thing. Consider the audio, consider the session choir possibility. And that's what I did with the college. And that's what I'm doing now with the chorale. So we've had a couple of rehearsals now and they're going fine. We're still figuring out how often do we mute? Do I have individual singers sing in front of the others and I coach them so that everybody can learn what they might be doing on the part? I had a realization the other day, well, Tuesday on our last rehearsal, because I've said from the beginning, you do not have to sing in front of everybody in order to participate. You
Yeah.
actually don't even have to record and submit to participate. You can just ride along and observe. The only problem is with the college choir, my students didn't have that option. They were required to sing in front of everybody. And I keep going tangent after tangent because it's so much fun. I had a retired opera singer who I know who, when talking about my students at the college, so this is a woman who got up on stage in numerous opera houses, sang Brunhilde, and so she knows about courage and singing in front of people. And she said these students are building personal bravery by singing alone in their homes over Zoom in front of each other. And I told my students that multiple times, and every audience I spoke to, I told that to, and I really believe that was true. So these students developed that courage. But I'm not requiring that of my chorale members. But what I do need is I need some sense of how well people are actually singing. Because if the first time I hear from people how well they're learning the music is when I get that audio track that I have to incorporate with everything else, I might discover, oh my goodness, this is not really what I had in mind. So, I could do a lot of editing, and I've been very transparent about that with the group, that I will be editing people's parts. And there will be places probably we'll just make that quiet there. No sound happening on your audio track at that moment. And that's okay. And that's what they do in the recording studio. Okay, I got to quote Ben Folds, and I'm not going to say the bad word, but in his song, Rockin' the Suburbs, from his album, I don't remember.
You can say it. If I use it, I'm going to blurt it out.
Okay, you'll blur it. Okay, right. So Ben Folds, what you need to know about this album is that Ben Folds recorded everything. He did all the instruments. He did all the singing. Wonderful album. What is it? I can't remember. Anyway, it's got this song called Rockin' the Suburbs. Rockin' the Suburbs, just like Michael Jackson did. Rockin' the Suburbs, except that he was talented. I love Ben Folds' self-deprecating approach to music. But he's saying in the words later in the song, I take the checks and face the facts. Some producer with computers fixes all my shitty tracks, right? So I'm going to, and I haven't said that to the girl, and maybe now that's out there, but the thing is, my tracks, when I record my audio practice guides, I have to fix those. I have to fix everybody's tracks. There's no such thing as a track that's perfect. And, Ben Folds says it a little bit differently than I might. But the fact is we have to edit these things and come to a final version that sounds pleasing to the ear and is a good representation of our chorale. So that's the long-term project. We'll have a concert on Friday, December 11th, probably at the same time that we would have, at 7:30, probably at the same time we would have been on stage in McIntyre Hall in Mount Vernon. We'll present the 5 or so songs that we're going to put together this quarter. I'm using Logic Pro now instead of GarageBand, which has exponentially expanded my possibilities, and I'm on a learning curve there. But it's all possible, it's all doable. And I'm an advocate for doing this kind of thing. And I was just speaking to another choral person who was considering what I'm doing for his group, and he's getting the words from his chorale, from his members, that, well, it's not the same. It's not the same as getting together and singing together. Well, yes, of course it's not the same. What is valuable? What's to be carried on? If you have to meet with other people, that's one thing, and that's not what I'm talking about here. I'm not attempting to sing outside 15 feet apart, facing into the wind, facing away from the wind, etc. Blah blah blah. As we learned in ACDA Nats in that webinar and others since. But I am looking for another way to participate and make some music that we feel proud of, that we can share with our community, that we can say to the community, we're still here and we're still making music and we'll be back. So that's my thoughts on that.
Wow. So Adam, I don't normally do this, but you've really are trusting of me in it. So whatever I think I'm going to publish, I'm going to just let you hear it first, because I just want you to be happy with it. And you've been through so much with the press and what the press does. And I want this to be a forum for you to feel like that you have some voice, because I think a lot of choir directors are going to listen to this, because we've thought of you, and our hearts have broken with you and your choir, and we do need guidance. And I didn't expect, when you signaled that you would be willing to talk to me, it gave me another level of not caution, but thoughtfulness, because I'm a bit of a risk taker, and I've wanted to push the envelope a bit, because I just feel like there's a line somewhere between being cautious and also living life and accepting the calculated risk of getting out of bed and getting in a car, and our kids are suffering because they don't feel connected. So I don't want to put you on this spot, but because you have dealt with seeing losing some singers, in this terrible tragedy, what are you saying to choir directors who? I hear what you're saying about virtual, because a lot of people, I think, need to hear that. Of course, it's not this, but we owe something to our singers. But what about those of us who want to sing again in person and feel like we can do it safely?
Yeah, I just don't have a lot of the last little bit of what I was saying. That's my positive. This is what we can do. When we talk about standing in the same room and singing together, and I have colleagues, I know people who are doing that kind of thing, and some of them are wearing interesting masks that my wife pointed out look rather like the plague masks, from the Middle Ages. It's like, and the science says that those masks are not actually resolving the issues. They're not helping the risks enough. So I don't have good news for singing together in person, and I have lots of reason for caution. In that rehearsal, in the March 3rd and March 10th rehearsals, I had a gut feeling of that maybe we shouldn't have the rehearsal. I was really on that side of the discussion. And, when you talked about canceling a rehearsal because of snow, we've been through that too. And this week we were, discussing the air quality. Each time that comes up, we always have a responsibility to make that decision. And my board has been very supportive with the chorale. We've communicated well and carefully and thoughtfully. And so that's something that I am blessed with that not every choral conductor has. Not that resource, or a board that's passive, or a board that's totally conflicted, or a board that's actually working against the director. I know all these things happen. So, but even so, I had a point where I understood, because it was phrased this way, I could make the choice to go to that rehearsal, and whoever wanted to come would come. Or I could choose to not go to that rehearsal. It was one person who had that kind of deciding power, and that was me. and I made the decision and two people died. And I'm, when will I come to terms with that? I don't know. I'm in the process. But I'll tell you what, I'm not letting myself get pushed into a situation anytime now where I have to make that kind of decision. I'm, and it's even applicable with my own family. You know, we plan to get together. My parents, my mother's turning 80 tomorrow, and we were thinking about getting together, somehow managing to not get close to each other all weekend. And we finally said, you know, my brothers and my parents and I, we discussed it, my wife, and we said, you know, this is too risky. I have this gut feeling that this is not a good idea. I need to listen to my gut. And I should have listened to my gut in March. You know, there was some person who spoke to our Facebook page who says, where's the remorse? You know, about our feelings about, because we put out a statement about how grief-stricken we were as a group, as a community, that we'd lost our people. And this person said, where's the remorse? Remorse implies a kind of guilt that doesn't, to me, doesn't seem the right, that's not what, that doesn't feel right. I mean, I've got plenty of ambiguous ambivalence about this situation, but remorse is not the right word.
Mm-mm.
So, and guilt also. I mean, I got that, but it doesn't really feel like that's quite right. I just have it anyway.
Yeah,
So,
right. Well,
you know, we go on about that. So I'm saying to choir directors out there, don't put yourself in this situation. You know, don't make a decision that you're going to regret later. Stand strong against the people who are not paying attention to the science. That's really important. Look at your resources, find your resources. There are plenty of them out there. Look at the study from the University of Colorado at Boulder, which they used us. You know, look at what the CDC is saying when they're not being edited, right? When they're saying what the scientists really think and the doctors really think, and wait it out.
okay.
I guess there's always more to say. I'm sure that there will be times in the future when the board of Skagit Valley Chorale and I and the singers, as some kind of vaccine comes in, as some kind of lessening in the number of cases happens and things start to look a little better, we're going to be facing this decision over and over again. We're probably going to be having the debate over and over again. When is it going to be time? When are we going to have that green light that says, yeah, actually, really, it's truly safe? I don't know. But in the meantime, I'm going to really try hard to stay strong, to stay informed, and to stay strong to what I believe is right and safe.
Yeah. Well, Adam, I this is going to sound both uh, romantic and maybe too familiar, but you are amazing, and I don't mean that in a romantic way. You know,
Understood.
I'm not romanticizing what you have endured and your choir has endured, but again, as a choir director, we all speak the same language, and we all. It's funny. When I first read that LA Times, it was only the second time I read it after you agreed that I saw what the media angle was. But as a choir director, I can tell you, the first time I read it, for me, there was nothing that rang, this person made a bad choice, or even that the press was trying to spin the story, because as choir directors, you know, we just get it. You know,
Yeah.
if you look at the date on the calendar, I mean, every choir director on the planet, you know, says those things. I hope to see you there, and we say a whole lot of other things too.
Yeah. Yeah. I hear that. I hear the support, and I get it often. And you know, it's funny because I go back and forth between sometimes not really needing to hear that,
Yeah.
feeling confident. Yeah, I mean, we did the best we could. And then other times it's like, oh my God, you know, I do need to hear that. So I appreciate it. I appreciate hearing that.